Wow. Welcome back to the Daily Review with Keith Hanson. I am Jocelyn Davis, filling in for Keith today. I am his guest host. And on the line, we have a guest. His name is Richard Manning. He is the president of Americans for Limited Government. He worked directly with President Trump on trade issues during President Trump's or candidate Trump's run for office in 2016. Richard Manning also serves on President Trump's transition team in the Labor Department. So welcome to the Daily Review. How are you, Richard?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm great. So nice to have you on the show. So let's dive on in. How did you get introduced to President Trump? How did you start working directly with him and trade issues of all things?
Well, it's relatively simple. I actually first met him back in the 1990s when I was a lobbyist for National Rifle Association in New Jersey, and he was trying to get some stuff done for his hotel. Mm-hmm. So we were both spent a lot of time in Trenton. But the real story is 2015, President Obama was trying to push the Trans-Pacific Partnership through, and I was trying to stop it. And I sat there and I said, who do I need to partner with who's big enough to help me stop this thing? I reached out to President Trump, then private citizen Trump, and he agreed to do a radio commercial, which Americans for Limited Government paid for. And he got, we ran it in New Hampshire, we ran it in South Carolina, pretty heavy rotation, and when he announced for president, we took it down. So I've been with him on trade since before he started running for president.
Nice. So what, apart from the obvious, but we do have listeners that we need to bring back up to speed here. So what was the problem with TPP? TPP.
Yeah. The problem with it was relatively simple. It was a trade deal with 11 countries, Pacific Rim countries, that would have essentially turned over U.S. sovereignty to an international board. And we would have ended up having to follow rules that our Congress wouldn't necessarily have agreed with. So so from a sovereignty perspective, it was a problem. It was also a problem because it continued on with a market principle that doesn't really work, and that is the idea that we can export our jobs to low cost labor places, mm-hmm. in places that have slavery. And we can basically export our jobs to those places, and somehow we're going to survive economically, and that just doesn't work. And so we were opposed to it, and we won.
And rightly so. And but we are paying the price somewhat for that. If we look at with this, I hate to go down this road, but the China Wuhan virus, the COVID pandemic, that we can only get our PPE at this point. Most of it's still coming from China 7-8 months later. If you go to the stores, you are looking at almost non-existent replenishing. They are not getting the, what do you want to call it? My brain went blank. They're not getting deliveries. Right. And I go through the stores, I get my camera out, and I'm going through and I'm looking at the back of the stores, and there is nothing except for shelving that's empty and racks. Nothing is coming in. So can you imagine if President Trump and you and the people working in the department had not renegotiated this, had not put the screws on China, had not started looking at the total the
total picture. The total picture on this. That's exactly right. What people didn't realize, and I believe they're beginning to, is that we've become dependent upon China for much of the goods and other things that we purchase, everything from trinkets to our medicines. And so a dependency is a bad thing, because when you're dependent upon one country, which doesn't like you very much, in fact has a plan to overtake you on the world stage, it becomes a source of extortion against you related to providing those goods that people get used to. Americans are not used to having shortages on their shelves. The last time we had shortages on our shelves was back when price controls were in effect in the 1970s. Mm-hmm. And I think for those of us who are old, remember, for instance, meat in the counter. You didn't have, you basically had shortages on various shelves then, and it was a direct result of American government policy. This is a direct result. The shortages we're seeing today are a direct result of the China basically being a bad trade partner, and as a result, we're paying a price for that. The good news is President Trump is really working manufacturers and companies to change their supply chains and get them at least to diversify out of China. Because if we have multiple sources of the same kind of clothing and other goods, then if China shuts down production, we are not shut out of those goods. We are able to get them from other sources. And so that's one of the things that we're working on to try to get companies like Walmart to diversify their supply chain so they aren't totally China dependent.
Mm-hmm. And we need that because basic, I can tell you basic from being in the lockdown and the quarantine, you cannot find the food dehydrators, the machines that seal your food, the
right.
meat and everything. You cannot find a bread maker anywhere. The clothing, there's virtually no fall or winter clothing out there. Winter boots are nowhere to be seen. We're still looking at toilet paper. I don't think toilet paper comes from China. Maybe it does, but we're seeing shortages of that. And the smart people like to say, well, that's all people cause that. Well, it doesn't matter if everybody wants toilet paper. There should pretty much be toilet paper. So,
well, one would expect, you're right, in that 6 months later, you can expect a shortage because people hoarded in the first month. But 6 months later, it's absurd that there is a shortage. Now, fortunately, down here where I live in the Washington, D.C. area, we finally have toilet paper on our shelves. We even have, get this, the paper towels. It's amazing. What we don't have is the wipes, the disinfectant wipes that you normally use just to clean your counters and stuff.
I was just going to ask you that. Yeah, there's no Lysol wipes. It's
right.
The only alcohol you can't, and I don't go to Dollar General. I try to go to Buy American, but it's almost impossible. But you would go to buy the bottle of plain alcohol.
Right.
In our family, when you cut your hand, the other person holds your hand down, and then you pour the alcohol on it, and you scream like a banshee, and you're all good.
Yeah.
I've
experienced that. I don't know what to say.
We do that all the time, and then the next time is with hydrogen peroxide. But you can't find these basic items, and I disagree. I don't like this whole mask thing. I think it is making healthy people very sick, but purely from a price point of view. You could go to Harbor Freight, you could go to Lowe's, you could go to Depot, you could go to Walgreens, and you could buy a 30, 50 pack of surgical masks for like $3-4 until the Chinese Wuhan virus showed up. And now you can get a whole 20 surgical masks for $40.99.
Yeah, it's pretty absurd. This is, once again, what we're learning here is we need to have domestic production of goods that are essential. That's why the president's stand in terms of trying to bring pharmaceutical production back to America is so important. We can't have our basic medicines being produced in China and then have those medicines cut off. But, one of the things that's even more insane is Wall Street, our financiers, are essentially funding the Chinese government buildup in military and, in fact, the buildup of their companies. They're all Chinese government controlled, by the way. And they're funding this using American dollars. So
how are
in many
they
respects,
doing? I don't understand that. Explain that.
Well, let me give you a whole thing that's happening right now.
Okay.
There is the largest public offering, initial public offering, an IPO, in the world's history is something called Alipay. It is essentially a payment system, credit card, has a lot of other aspects to it, but it is a Chinese spinoff of Alibaba, and which is basically their Amazon.
Okay.
And so it's a spinoff of that. The initial public offering is being underwritten by four. Four of the five underwriters are U.S. financiers. We're talking J.P. Morgan. We're talking, Goldman Sachs. We're talking Citibank and Morgan Stanley. So we've got four big financiers are doing that. All U.S. financiers, and IPO is new money. Okay? It's new money. It's people saying we're going to pour a bunch of money into this stock in the hope that it's going to go up. Well, it's expected to go for $40 billion. That's $40 billion of new dollars that the U.S. Wall Street is basically selling and exposing Americans to. It's going to go directly into the pockets of the Communist Chinese.
Which
it's insane. It is insane to do that.
That is, and this is.